It was a bright morning in the city, the kind of day where the sun glinted off the buildings and people moved quickly to their destinations. The streets were alive with the usual sounds of traffic, conversations, and distant construction. Among the city's many drivers, there was one woman who stood out not by appearance but by calm presence. She was dressed simply, her hair neatly done, her car modest yet clean. To any passerby, she looked like an ordinary person on an ordinary morning, quietly handling her daily routine. She was driving to a community event, a small gathering meant to encourage young people to get involved in local projects. She enjoyed these events, finding satisfaction in connecting with people and seeing their enthusiasm. Today, however, was going to be different. Today, a simple drive would turn into a moment she would never forget. As she approached a busy intersection, she noticed flashing lights in her rearview mirror. Her heart sank a little, though she kept her composure. She calmly pulled over to the side of the road, knowing that panicking would not help. The officer stepped out of his car, his expression firm and his movements deliberate. He walked toward her vehicle, his hand resting near his belt. She rolled down her window and greeted him politely. "Good morning, officer," she said with a soft smile. The officer's eyes narrowed slightly, and his tone was sharp. "License and registration," he said, not waiting for a reply. She handed over her documents with steady hands. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked politely, hoping to understand why she had been stopped. The officer scanned her papers quickly. "You were going a little over the speed limit back there," he said. His tone was accusatory, as if he were already judging her before knowing anything about her. She explained that she thought she was within the limit and had been careful. She spoke calmly, trying to de-escalate the tension, but the officer did not seem interested in listening. He interrupted her, his voice rising slightly, implying that she was being difficult. She remained composed, but the unease was growing. The street was busy, and some pedestrians had started noticing the interaction. "Do you know how to follow the rules?" the officer asked, his words edged with disrespect. She blinked, a flicker of surprise passing through her eyes. She had not expected such rudeness. She answered politely, explaining again that she had been careful and that she had no intention of breaking any rules. But the officer seemed determined to assert his authority rather than understand. The tension was palpable. Passers-by glanced over, curious about the scene. Some discreetly took out their phones, sensing that something unusual was happening. Despite the crowd forming around them, the woman did not raise her voice or show anger. She understood that losing her temper would only escalate the situation. Her composure contrasted sharply with the officer's stern demeanor. As the minutes passed, the officer grew more impatient. He called for backup, suggesting that she might be more of a problem than she truly was. The woman remained calm, quietly enduring the disrespect, though inside she felt a mix of frustration and disbelief. She had never imagined being treated this way simply because of assumptions about her appearance. Then, another officer arrived on the scene. He approached quickly, his eyes immediately recognizing her. There was a moment of pause, a flicker of recognition that changed everything. He leaned slightly toward the first officer, speaking in a low tone. The first officer's face shifted from sternness to surprise, then to embarrassment as he realized who she was. "This is the mayor's wife," the second officer said quietly. The words hung in the air, heavy with irony. The crowd nearby started murmuring, whispers spreading like wildfire. People glanced at the woman and then at the officers, a sense of realization dawning on everyone present. The power dynamic shifted instantly. The first officer, who had been so quick to judge, now stammered, trying to find the right words. He apologized, his tone noticeably different, softer, almost forced. The woman accepted the apology with grace, but she did not hide her disappointment. She reminded the officer that respect should not depend on a person's social status. "Every citizen deserved basic courtesy," she said quietly but firmly. She got back into her car and drove away, leaving behind a mix of awkward silence and murmurs of admiration from the bystanders. Later, the video from the bystanders began to circulate online. It was short, capturing the tension and the moment of recognition. Social media quickly picked up the clip, and people expressed outrage at the officer's behavior. They praised the woman for her composure, her ability to remain calm despite being disrespected. The officer faced scrutiny not only from the public, but also within the police department. The incident had exposed a deeper problem, one that could not be ignored. The mayor saw the video and felt a mix of emotions. He was angry, not just because his wife had been disrespected, but because it revealed a failure in the very system he was responsible for overseeing. He called an emergency meeting with the police chief to review the incident and discuss measures to prevent such behavior in the future. The mayor had to balance his personal feelings with his professional duty, ensuring accountability while maintaining public trust. In the days that followed, the woman spoke at a community event. She did not dwell on the incident or use her status as leverage. Instead, she spoke about fairness, empathy, and the importance of treating everyone with respect. Her words resonated deeply with the audience. "Respect is not a privilege," she said. "It is a right." The officer who had disrespected her attended the meeting, feeling the weight of his actions. He listened to her speech with a heavy heart, understanding that his behavior had consequences beyond just one encounter. He later asked to speak with her privately, expressing genuine remorse. She listened and accepted his apology, emphasizing that the lesson was not just for him, but for everyone in a position of authority. The incident sparked discussions across the city about bias, assumptions, and accountability. The mayor announced new training programs for officers, focusing on empathy, respect, and fair treatment. The woman continued her advocacy quietly, supporting initiatives that promoted understanding and fairness in the community. The officer volunteered for the new training program, determined to change and ensure that no one else would be treated the way he had treated her. Through this experience, the city learned an important lesson. True character was revealed not by how people treated those in power, but by how they treated those they did not recognize. The mayor's wife had shown grace under pressure. The officer had faced his shortcomings, and the community had witnessed a moment that would leave a lasting impact. It was a reminder that respect, patience, and understanding were not just ideals to aspire to, but essential elements of a just society. After the incident, the city felt a quiet ripple of tension. People talked in hushed tones about what had happened on that busy street. The video of the traffic stop had been shared countless times online, and while many were shocked at the officer's behavior, most were inspired by the woman's calmness and composure. She had shown the kind of dignity that not only protected her but also made people stop and think about how respect should be a right for everyone. The mayor's wife returned to her usual schedule but could not ignore the incident. It had left a mark, not just on her but on the entire community. She spent the next few days meeting with her team, planning her visits to schools and local organizations. Yet, even in her normal routine, the memory of the stop lingered. She thought about how easily an everyday situation could become humiliating, and how often people were judged unfairly based on appearance or assumptions. She knew that many citizens faced such moments without anyone recognizing their value or humanity. Meanwhile, the officer who had stopped her faced serious reflection. He had returned to the station feeling uneasy. His colleagues noticed a change in his demeanor. He was quieter than usual, thoughtful and somewhat embarrassed. The story had spread through the department, and while some laughed it off at first, it soon became clear that the public scrutiny was serious. The police chief called a meeting to review the incident, asking officers to watch the video and analyze their behavior. It was an uncomfortable moment for the department, but it was also necessary. The woman's experience became a catalyst for change. She began speaking more openly about the importance of empathy and fairness. During a community gathering, she recounted her story without bitterness. She described the fear, the humiliation, and the strength it took to remain calm. The audience was moved. Many nodded in understanding. She did not mention her title often, but instead focused on the lesson. Respect should be given to everyone, regardless of who they are. Local news stations picked up the story. Interviews with the woman highlighted her grace and her commitment to the community. The city began to engage in conversations about bias, authority, and the power dynamics present in everyday life. The mayor's wife became a symbol of poise and wisdom, someone who faced a difficult moment and used it to encourage better understanding among people. The officer requested a meeting with her, wanting to apologize personally. She agreed, not out of obligation but because she believed in the value of confronting mistakes directly. When they met, he was nervous, unsure of how to begin. He admitted that he had allowed assumptions to cloud his judgment, that he had been disrespectful and unfair. She listened carefully, acknowledging his apology but also emphasizing the importance of learning from the mistake. She wanted him to understand that this was more than a personal encounter. It was a lesson about humanity and dignity. The conversation was honest and quiet. It was not dramatic or angry. She spoke about fairness and empathy, explaining that respect should not be conditional. He nodded, taking in every word. He realized that the lesson applied not only to his role as an officer, but to how he interacted with all members of the community. The weight of his actions settled on him, but he also felt a sense of hope. He had been given the chance to change. Over the following weeks, the mayor worked to implement reforms within the police department. He introduced new programs focused on empathy, bias awareness, and respectful communication. Officers were encouraged to participate in workshops, attend community events, and listen to the experiences of citizens. The mayor believed that the incident, while unfortunate, had provided an opportunity to improve the culture within the department. Change was not immediate, but the conversation had started. The mayor's wife continued her community work with renewed focus. She attended schools, spoke at local gatherings, and met with young leaders. She encouraged people to recognize the humanity in everyone they encountered. Her message was simple yet powerful. Small acts of respect and understanding could create ripples of positive change in a community. She wanted people to feel empowered to stand up for fairness and to treat others with dignity. The officer who had stopped her began volunteering in some of the new programs. He attended workshops alongside colleagues and participated in role-playing exercises to better understand citizens' perspectives. Each session reminded him of the incident and reinforced the importance of treating everyone with respect. Slowly, he began to change, realizing that one moment of judgment could have lasting consequences. The community noticed his efforts and started to acknowledge that change was possible, even in those who had made mistakes. Meanwhile, citizens began sharing their own experiences online and in community forums. Many spoke about times they had felt unfairly judged, stopped, or dismissed. The conversation became broader, touching on everyday moments where assumptions and bias affected interactions. The woman's story served as a catalyst, encouraging people to speak up and demand respect for themselves and others. The city started to engage in deeper discussions about fairness, authority, and accountability, showing that one moment could have a ripple effect far beyond its origin. The incident also sparked discussions about personal resilience and composure. People admired the mayor's wife for how she handled the situation, staying calm despite humiliation and fear. Her approach became an example for others, demonstrating that strength often comes from quiet dignity rather than confrontation. She had shown that facing disrespect with poise could make a more lasting impact than anger or retaliation. Her actions encouraged others to reflect on how they responded to challenging moments in their own lives. Community organizations began hosting panels and discussions about bias, empathy, and civil engagement. Schools invited speakers to talk about fair treatment and respect for others. Local leaders emphasized that change required consistent effort and awareness. The city, once focused only on policy, now recognized the value of personal responsibility and empathy in daily interactions. People began to see that small changes in behavior could improve trust and understanding across the community. As weeks turned into months, the story of the traffic stop became a reference point in conversations about fairness and respect. People discussed it not for scandal, but for the lessons it contained. The mayor's wife continued her advocacy quietly, never seeking attention for her actions. She remained focused on connecting with people and encouraging them to treat each other with dignity. Her presence reminded everyone that leadership and influence were not always about titles, but about the choices made in everyday interactions. The officer who had stopped her reflected on his experience regularly. He shared his story during training sessions, speaking openly about the mistake he had made and the lessons he had learned. His honesty encouraged other officers to examine their behavior and consider how their actions affected those around them. The ripple effect of one encounter continued to influence the culture of the department, promoting awareness and accountability. Through all this, the woman maintained her calm, consistent approach. She understood that change was gradual and that one incident did not define anyone entirely. Her focus remained on creating understanding, fairness, and empathy in her community. The city learned an important lesson. Respect and dignity were not privileges reserved for certain people, but rights belonging to all. Her story inspired people to reflect on their own behavior and the way they treated others, reminding them that small moments of kindness and respect could have profound and lasting effects. As the city moved through its busy days, the story of the traffic stop continued to influence conversations everywhere. People talked about it in cafes, on buses, and in offices. Some were shocked at how easily someone could be treated unfairly, while others reflected on the strength it took to remain calm in such a situation. The mayor's wife had become an unexpected example of patience, dignity, and resilience, and her story spread quietly, touching many hearts. She went about her daily routines, attending community events, visiting schools, and supporting local projects. Yet the traffic stop remained in her mind. She thought about the importance of empathy and how often people judged others without knowing the full story. She realized that many citizens, especially those without visibility or status, might face similar disrespect, but without anyone noticing or intervening. This thought strengthened her resolve to speak about fairness and equality, not from a place of anger, but from a place of hope and understanding. Meanwhile, the officer who had stopped her continued to deal with the consequences of his actions. At the station, he spent long hours reflecting on the incident. His colleagues discussed it openly, some with embarrassment, others with frustration. The police chief had mandated internal reviews and discussions, making it clear that behavior like this could not be tolerated. The officer attended every session, feeling a mix of shame and determination to learn from his mistake. He realized that one moment of poor judgment could ripple outward, affecting not just the people directly involved, but the community as a whole. The mayor's wife used her influence carefully. She knew that she did not need to shout or demand attention. Instead, she chose to act through her words and presence. She spoke about respect at community centers, emphasizing that every individual deserved dignity, no matter their appearance, background, or social status. Her talks were simple but powerful, filled with real-life examples that people could relate to. Her calm demeanor drew people in, encouraging them to listen rather than just hear. Citizens began to share their own experiences. Parents spoke about moments when their children had been unfairly treated. Young adults described times when assumptions had limited their opportunities. Community members reflected on daily interactions that, while small, revealed larger patterns of bias or disrespect. The mayor's wife encouraged these conversations, reminding people that change began with awareness and action. Every shared story became a building block for understanding and empathy. In the police department, change was gradual but noticeable. Officers participated in workshops focused on communication, fairness, and recognizing unconscious bias. The officer who had stopped her became a vocal participant, sharing his personal experience as a cautionary tale. He spoke about the embarrassment he felt, the lessons he learned, and the importance of treating every citizen with the same level of respect he now knew he should have extended from the beginning. His honesty inspired others to consider their actions more carefully. The mayor closely monitored these changes. He was aware that leadership required more than policy announcements. It required modeling the behavior expected of everyone in the city. He encouraged collaboration between citizens and law enforcement, promoting transparency and dialogue. Community meetings were held where officers and residents could speak openly about concerns, expectations, and experiences. The mayor's wife played a crucial role in these discussions, acting as a bridge between the public and officials. Her perspective reminded everyone that empathy and respect were not abstract ideals, but practical necessities for a functioning city. The story also reached schools, where teachers and administrators used it as an example to teach young people about fairness and civic responsibility. Students discussed moments when assumptions could lead to unfair treatment and explored ways to respond with dignity and calm. The mayor's wife occasionally visited classrooms, sharing her story in a way that encouraged reflection without fear or anger. She highlighted the power of quiet courage and the importance of standing up for fairness while maintaining composure. At the community level, organizations began implementing small initiatives aimed at promoting respect. Neighborhood groups held workshops, discussion circles, and volunteer events, all emphasizing empathy and understanding. Citizens began to notice changes in daily interactions. People were more willing to listen, to consider others' perspectives, and to respond with patience. The ripple effect of one incident had begun to influence the larger culture of the city, showing that even a difficult moment could lead to meaningful growth. The officer who had stopped the mayor's wife faced personal challenges as he worked to rebuild trust. Some colleagues remained skeptical, and some citizens were wary, but he continued to participate in training and community outreach. He learned to listen more than he spoke, to reflect before reacting, and to consider the human impact of his decisions. Over time, he began to understand that accountability was not punishment alone, but a path toward improvement and integrity. The mayor's wife, meanwhile, kept her focus on long-term impact. She spoke about the importance of systemic change, but also about individual responsibility. She encouraged people to recognize moments when they could make a difference, whether through small acts of kindness, standing up against unfair treatment, or simply listening with empathy. Her message was consistent. Respect and fairness were not optional, and each person had a role in creating a just community. Social media continued to share stories inspired by the incident. People posted their reflections, discussed community changes, and celebrated small victories in respect and fairness. The mayor's wife did not seek the spotlight, but her example encouraged countless others to consider their own behavior. The officer who had once acted disrespectfully now became part of the story of change, showing that growth and learning were possible when one faced mistakes honestly and openly. The city began to notice subtle but meaningful shifts. Community events were more collaborative, interactions between residents and law enforcement were more constructive, and public discussions emphasized empathy and understanding. The ripple effect of the traffic stop extended far beyond the immediate moment, touching lives in ways that were both visible and quiet. People began to see that respect was not just a formality, but a foundation for trust and connection. Through all of this, the mayor's wife maintained her poise and quiet strength. She did not let the incident define her, but she allowed it to inform her actions and priorities. She continued to visit schools, community centers, and local organizations, always emphasizing the importance of dignity, fairness, and empathy. Her example showed that one person's calm courage could inspire change, encourage reflection, and influence the behavior of others. The officer who had stopped her also began to see his role differently. He took the lessons he had learned seriously, understanding that respect, patience, and understanding were essential qualities for anyone in a position of authority. His journey was ongoing, filled with moments of reflection and effort to improve, but the city could see that change was possible. The incident, once a source of embarrassment, had become a turning point, demonstrating that mistakes, when acknowledged and addressed, could lead to growth and improvement. The story of the traffic stop. The mayor's wife and the officer became more than a single event. It became a symbol of the importance of empathy, respect, and the human capacity for change. People in the city began to understand that fairness was not about status or appearance, but about recognizing the humanity in everyone. The incident reminded everyone that small actions, whether respectful words, attentive listening, or thoughtful decisions, could have lasting and meaningful impacts. It was a lesson that reached far beyond the streets, influencing schools, offices, homes, and hearts, and reminding everyone that the power to create change often begins with one moment of courage and dignity. The weeks following the incident were filled with reflection and quiet change. The city had begun to feel the subtle but meaningful ripples from that one morning. People discussed the event in small gatherings, online communities, and in conversations with friends and family. Many expressed admiration for the mayor's wife, not for her title or status, but for the grace she had shown under pressure. Her calm and dignified response had made people think about the way respect and fairness were treated in daily life. She continued her work, visiting schools, meeting with local leaders, and attending community events. At every gathering, she took opportunities to emphasize empathy, fairness, and the importance of treating others with dignity. She spoke about real situations, not abstract concepts, and encouraged people to reflect on their own actions. Her message was consistent. Every individual deserved respect, and small actions of understanding could create large positive effects in the community. Meanwhile, the officer who had stopped her was still processing his own journey. He attended all required training sessions and voluntarily participated in additional workshops on communication, empathy, and community engagement. Each session reminded him of the traffic stop and the importance of reflecting on his behavior before acting. He began to understand that authority was not about asserting power, but about protecting and respecting the people he served. At the police station, changes were visible. Officers began discussing encounters in ways that encouraged learning rather than judgment. Leadership emphasized accountability and empathy. The chief spoke openly about how one incident could influence the perception of the entire department and the community. Officers shared stories of their own mistakes and reflected on how to prevent them. The officer who had stopped the mayor's wife became an example of personal growth, showing that acknowledging faults and striving to improve could build trust and respect. The mayor's wife also focused on outreach to young people. She visited classrooms, youth centers, and community programs, encouraging students to stand up for fairness and dignity in their daily lives. She used her story as an example, but did not dwell on personal details or her status. Instead, she emphasized that anyone could make a difference by treating others with respect and by remaining calm and thoughtful in challenging situations. Her approach resonated with students who saw her not as someone distant or untouchable, but as a person who faced struggles and responded with wisdom. The public began to notice shifts in behavior. Small interactions became more thoughtful, and people became more aware of the impact of their words and actions. Neighborhood groups held discussion circles, inviting citizens to share experiences of unfair treatment and ways to respond positively. These meetings built understanding and a stronger sense of community. Many participants credited the story of the traffic stop as a turning point, a reminder that even one incident could inspire broader reflection and improvement. The officer who had once acted disrespectfully found himself seeking guidance from experienced colleagues. He asked questions, listened carefully, and participated in exercises to better understand the perspectives of citizens. Slowly, he began to rebuild trust with both colleagues and the community. He volunteered for public events and spoke honestly about his mistakes, emphasizing the importance of learning and growth. His honesty and dedication began to change perceptions, showing that accountability and effort could repair damage and foster understanding. The mayor worked behind the scenes to support these efforts. He ensured that policies emphasized fairness, transparency, and accountability. He encouraged open dialogue between the community and law enforcement, and promoted initiatives that focused on empathy and ethical decision-making. By connecting policy with real-life experiences, he reinforced the importance of both personal and institutional responsibility. The mayor's wife also contributed to policy discussions, not from a place of authority, but from lived experience. She shared insights about how respect could influence interactions and outcomes, emphasizing that empathy and fairness were essential for a healthy community. Her input helped shape programs and training that were more grounded in real situations and human perspectives. The goal was not just compliance, but genuine understanding and positive action. Community conversations began to highlight the importance of reflection and mindfulness in daily life. Residents shared experiences of times when assumptions had led to unfair treatment, discussing how awareness and empathy could prevent similar situations. The story of the traffic stop served as a catalyst, encouraging people to think critically about their own behavior and the impact it could have on others. Small changes in attitude and action became noticeable, from simple greetings to thoughtful communication in difficult situations. Schools also integrated lessons about empathy, fairness, and respect into their programs. Teachers encouraged students to consider perspectives beyond their own and to recognize the value of calm, respectful responses in challenging moments. The mayor's wife occasionally visited classrooms, sharing her story in ways that emphasized resilience and dignity. Students responded positively, inspired by the idea that they too could influence their communities through thoughtful behavior and strong moral choices. Over time, the city began to see meaningful change. Public interactions became more considerate, neighborhood meetings focused on understanding and problem-solving, and law enforcement officers demonstrated greater awareness of their responsibilities. The ripple effect of that one traffic stop extended far beyond the immediate incident, shaping the culture of respect, empathy, and accountability throughout the city. The mayor's wife, though quiet in her approach, had inspired a shift in thinking that affected citizens of all ages and backgrounds. The officer who had stopped her continued his personal journey. He reflected on his behavior daily and sought opportunities to make amends through service, volunteer work, and engagement with the community. He understood that trust, once damaged, required consistent effort to rebuild. By sharing his experiences and encouraging colleagues to reflect, he contributed to a more thoughtful and empathetic police force. His growth became part of the story of change, illustrating that even mistakes could become opportunities for learning and improvement. The mayor's wife remained steadfast in her mission. She focused on long-term impact, understanding that cultural change took time. She attended events, spoke at meetings, and supported initiatives that promoted fairness and understanding. She emphasized that respect was not a reward for status, but a fundamental principle that everyone deserved. Her calm strength and consistent message became a source of inspiration, showing that one person could influence a community through thoughtful action and example. The city's residents began to embrace these lessons in everyday life. People spoke more openly about fairness and empathy, encouraging each other to reflect on how they treated others. Neighborhood groups organized volunteer activities, fostering collaboration and understanding. Citizens recognized that small, consistent actions could lead to meaningful changes in relationships and community dynamics. The story of the traffic stop had grown into a broader movement, encouraging respect and dignity in countless ways. Through all of this, the mayor's wife continued to live by the principles she advocated. She did not seek recognition or praise, but her actions spoke louder than words. She reminded the city that true influence comes from integrity, empathy, and quiet courage. Her example inspired citizens to reflect on their own behavior, to stand up for fairness and to treat others with respect, even in moments of challenge or conflict. The officer who had once acted inappropriately became a testament to the power of accountability and growth. He worked to rebuild trust, to act responsibly, and to demonstrate the lessons he had learned. His journey showed that change was possible, even after mistakes, and that personal reflection could lead to positive impact on both individuals and the larger community. The traffic stop, once a moment of tension and humiliation, had evolved into a story of understanding, empathy, and transformation that resonated throughout the city. Time passed, but the lessons from that morning's traffic stop continued to shape the city. People remembered the calm dignity of the mayor's wife, and the moment when an officer realized the importance of respect. Her story became a quiet inspiration, showing that integrity and empathy could have a lasting effect far beyond one encounter. Citizens, young and old, carried her example into their own interactions, learning to pause, reflect, and treat others with fairness. The mayor's wife kept her focus on community engagement. She visited local schools, encouraging students to embrace responsibility and empathy. She reminded them that everyone deserved respect, and that their actions, even small ones, could influence others in powerful ways. She used her own story carefully, not to highlight her status, but to illustrate that even ordinary moments could reveal lessons about humanity. Children and teens listened closely, absorbing her message about dignity, fairness, and personal accountability. At the same time, the officer who had disrespected her worked hard to demonstrate change. He volunteered for community programs, attended workshops, and took part in discussions about ethics and responsibility. He spoke honestly about his mistake and the embarrassment it had caused. His colleagues observed a transformation. He had gone from defensive and judgmental to reflective and accountable. His actions gradually restored some trust in the community, showing that personal growth could emerge from even the most uncomfortable experiences. The city, as a whole, began to notice differences in daily interactions. Residents treated one another more thoughtfully, officers engaged citizens with more empathy, and community gatherings focused on collaboration rather than conflict. The ripple effect of that traffic stop was visible in small but meaningful ways. Neighbors checked in on each other, conversations became more respectful, and a stronger sense of shared responsibility emerged. People realized that fairness and respect were not abstract ideals but essential elements of daily life. The mayor continued to support initiatives that emphasized accountability and community engagement. He encouraged dialogue between citizens and law enforcement, emphasizing transparency and understanding. Policies were adjusted to include training on empathy, bias awareness, and ethical decision-making. The mayor's wife provided insight, sharing perspectives that helped ensure programs were grounded in real-world experiences and human interactions. Together, their work reinforced the idea that leadership involved listening, reflection, and action. The officer reflected on how easily assumptions could lead to unfair treatment. He understood that respect was not something to offer selectively, but a constant responsibility. He engaged with community members, asking questions, listening carefully, and learning to consider perspectives different from his own. Through his efforts, he began to rebuild trust, both with the public and within the department. His story became part of a larger narrative about accountability, growth, and the power of reflection. In schools, students took lessons from the story and applied them in everyday life. They learned to recognize moments where they might act unfairly, to pause and consider the feelings of others, and to respond with empathy rather than judgment. Teachers reported that classrooms became more supportive, and students showed greater awareness of fairness in their interactions. The mayor's wife occasionally visited to reinforce these lessons, demonstrating that calm courage and dignity could inspire long-lasting change. Community meetings and neighborhood programs flourished. Residents shared stories, exchanged perspectives, and collaborated on solutions to local problems. Discussions about bias, respect, and empathy became common, creating an atmosphere of reflection and mutual understanding. The city started to see a culture shift, where small actions of respect and fairness reinforced trust and connection across neighborhoods. The traffic stop, once a moment of tension and embarrassment, had become a catalyst for broader cultural growth. The mayor's wife continued to lead by example, showing that influence did not require power or authority. Her calm demeanor, thoughtful words, and consistent actions reminded everyone that integrity and empathy mattered. She encouraged citizens to stand up for fairness, to engage in community life, and to treat each other with dignity, even when faced with challenges or disagreement. Her story showed that personal conduct could shape the moral tone of a community and inspire others to act with consideration and respect. The officer who had once acted disrespectfully became a model of accountability. He shared his experience in workshops, discussions, and training sessions, emphasizing how reflection and humility could lead to personal growth. He spoke openly about mistakes, the embarrassment of his actions, and the importance of learning from them. His journey demonstrated that accountability was not just about correcting errors, but about changing behavior, understanding perspectives, and committing to ongoing improvement. Citizens, inspired by both the mayor's wife and the officer's transformation, began taking more responsibility in their interactions. People treated neighbors, colleagues, and strangers with more thoughtfulness. They became more aware of bias, more patient in disagreements, and more committed to fairness in their daily lives. Small changes in behavior created a larger atmosphere of empathy and understanding across the city. The community recognized that respect and dignity were not privileges, but essential parts of living together peacefully and effectively. The mayor's wife also focused on long-term projects aimed at reinforcing these values. She supported youth leadership programs, community education initiatives, and public discussions about fairness and accountability. Her approach remained calm and thoughtful, emphasizing that lasting change required patience, reflection, and consistent action. By encouraging people to engage actively in building a respectful and fair society, she helped create a foundation for enduring cultural improvement. The officer continued his personal journey, mentoring younger colleagues, participating in community service, and reflecting daily on the lessons learned from the incident.